And welcome back to the long-awaited next episode of What If Kal-El Was Goku? So right off the bat, I want to talk about a couple of things and the state of the story as it is. Why are the episodes getting longer and longer while covering less material? Well, simply put, as the story started, there was less that was different. So I really only covered what was changing between the original Dragon Ball and our new story if we swap the protagonist. But changes have a way of echoing down through history. So while very much remain the same in classic Dragon Ball, it's beginning to have effects later on. Furthermore, it's the kind of story. While Dragon Ball was a big adventure and Bulma was primarily the leading character of the story, who directed their action and direction, Dragon Ball Z was more of a consequence of these actions. Simply put, Goku was very reactionary early in his story, but as it goes on, more and more is the outcome of his action. So it just takes longer to explain how much has changed because of a different person being in the lead role. All of this echoing down from just a few key changes. Remember, those key changes are that A, Kal-El does not have his Saiyan instinct for battle, and B, he has the added guidance of Jor-El. There's also the fact that he has a different power set, but ultimately I think power is the least significant thing that changes here. Rather, it is nature and some of his nurture as well. While both are raised a Buddhist by Grandpa Gohan, you can't change the fact that Kal-El is still naturally just someone different. We can even see through Elseworld stories like Red Sun that even if raised in a communist dictatorship and taught to uphold the values of that dictatorship, still the fundamentally good person that Kal-El is shines through. Meanwhile, Goku, a Saiyan with a savage instinct for battle, is definitely more of a story of nurture over nature, as his Buddhist upbringing informs him to be a better person and to channel that instinct for a greater good. I want to answer just a couple of questions. What about the identity of Clark Kent? I want to be clear, although I've slipped up a couple of times and called him Superman, Goku on Earth in this story is just Goku. Just like in Dragon Ball, Goku is a public figure. He's a competitor in the World Martial Arts competition. And he makes no attempt to hide who he is. And he kind of slipped into obscurity like the original Goku after his victory over Piccolo Jr. He has no desire to create an alter ego in Clark Kent, so he is just Goku. There is no Clark Kent in this world. Everyone knows who Goku is. He's a really strong fighter, and he's married to one of the most brilliant and richest women in the world. How far will this story go? I have planned it up through the end of the Frieza saga, step by step, and scripted it. And I have some vaguer ideas for the Cell saga and maybe a very rough idea of something that comes after, but right now my intention is to complete the Frieza saga, and from there, I don't really intend to record anymore. Perhaps I'll pass the torch along. What is Goku's power level? Power levels are bullshit. I will avoid power levels as much as I possibly can, and Dragon Ball was better for it when they ushered the last scouter out the door. If you hadn't noticed, every single time a character boasted of their higher power level, they got their ass kicked. Power levels are absolutely meaningless. They measure nothing, they define nothing, and they were obviously created as a joke. I mean, even in classic Dragon Ball, we can see that Toriyama doesn't really have an understanding of scale. The same Goku who fought the Master Roshi who blew up the moon is also under threat by a hand grenade in the next storyline. So, much like watching an old Popeye cartoon, let's stop trying to put numbers to these things and just appreciate these as a visual way of telling a story. So with that out of the way, on with the show. When last we left Goku and Kara Zor-El, they were on their way to Namek in the second ship. During this time, they've been training together, making use of the gravity engine, both growing much stronger, able to face off against a worthy opponent. And even more importantly, they're having some long conversations. Kara tells Goku about everything he's missed, about how Frieza destroyed planet Krypton, how she was off-world at the time, how Zod was a hostage held by Frieza, and how Frieza had warped their upbringing, telling them lies of how the planet spontaneously exploded, and how he mercifully gathered up the surviving Kryptonian and brought them into the Frieza Force. And she told him just exactly why Zod bears such a grudge against the House of El, how he blamed Kal-El's father for distracting his father, the great General Drew Zod, from the real threat of Frieza with his babbling about some unstable element in the planet's core. If only Jor-El hadn't split the leadership and disunified the planet, then clearly his father Drew Zod, mother Ursa, and the once great General Non, surely if they had been able to stand together with the united forces of Krypton, they could have driven Frieza back. But no, the High Council listened to the ravings of a lowly scientist who didn't understand the needs of the planet like the warrior class did. She told him of how his father and Zod's father and mother all perished with the planet, how Frieza cruelly had the brilliant Non lobotomized and reduced to a raging monster, and she told him at last of what Frieza feared could come from Krypton, the legend of the Kryptonian Superman. Goku had gotten an idea about his training, impressed by Zod's spacewalk during their battle, long enough to fly to the sun and back. He was going to test his own limits, repeatedly stepping out of the ship to see how long he could hold his breath in space. When their journey brought them near a large star, Goku stepped out. The gravity well was pulling them in. Fortunately, he was able to fairly easily push the spaceship out with the boost from all the extra sunlight. But something went wrong. The hatch wouldn't open. Kal-El was stuck, holding his breath in deep space, unable to re-enter the ship. Now, surely a Kryptonian can hold their breath for a very long time, but soon minutes were turning to hours. Clearly, there could be no oxygen left in his lungs, but Kal-El did not perish. He has a moment that he understands in the light of this great star, and finally releases the spent air in his lungs, and floats there in space. Through the window, he smiles at Kara. He's come to understand something. The sunlight he metabolizes, and the ki he learned to wield on Earth, they may not be so different after all. As a Kryptonian, sunlight powers him. Perhaps not just his superpowers, but his body itself. In the presence of strong sun, he finds he doesn't even need to breathe. This buys them the time to get the hatch open safely without damaging it. Eventually, he comes back inside, but they realize something's wrong. It won't shut now. They have no choice but to jam the hatch shut and weld it shut with heat vision. This ship will not open again until they reach Namek. There'll be no repeating this trick. Whatever it was a freak occurrence. Kara looks to her cousin, wondering, could this man be the one that Frieza feared? Meanwhile on Earth, let's check in on the C-Team. Dr. Gero was none too happy that his rival in his war of mind versus muscle had just taken off as soon as he was alive again. Well, if he's just going to leave me on Earth, I'm going to conquer his planet. Let's see how he likes that when he comes back. Of course, he thinks on such short notice, that project isn't ready. So there's no time for androids. They take far too long. But what he can make a lot of are robots. Specifically, the one he used once before. As you might know him, Major Metallotron. That Goku once fought in the Muscle Tower. Sure, it was no match for Goku, and it definitely wouldn't be now. But Goku's not here. Most of the superpowered humans are not here. It seems like it'll be fairly easy to roll over this whole planet by resurrecting the might of the Red Ribbon Army in its heyday. He launches several assaults on different world capitals. So our C-Team splits up and circles the world under the command of Chi-Chi. A reminder, Chi-Chi continued her martial arts training, learned to fly, learned to use the Kamehameha, and has generally been an adventurer rather than a housewife all this time, and is now much stronger than she used to be. It'll be a hard fight, but we know she and the other fighters that remained on Earth can handle it. There's a lot of robots out there and a lot of work to be done. She'll be quite busy until the crew gets back. So, you probably want us to get back to Namek. When last we left our heroes, Gohan, Krillin, and Bulma, they were confronted by Zod, who seemed quite desperate to get their help. Zod knew there was a bigger threat, and while the heroes were rivals for the Dragon Balls, they weren't out for blood the way Frieza and his men were, and he knew the Ginyu Force had just landed on planet Namek. Zod may know he has the strength advantage to take the Dragon Balls, but he doesn't have the time for a fight. He's going to have to use reason. And Zod, he already knows he can't bring back Krypton. He learned that on Earth. There's a 1-year limit to anyone you can bring back. His dream of restoring Krypton's former glory is gone. He has nothing left but vengeance. Vengeance against Frieza. And if that means dealing with the Earthlings who served him a severe beating, then so be it. He argues that Frieza and his men are the bigger threat here. Just let him have his wish. Let him have his immortality. He can defeat Frieza for them, and then they can have the Dragon Balls next time. Dende's been keeping a secret. Zod doesn't know that there are 3 wishes on Namekian Dragon Balls. They can give him his wish and keep the other 2 secret from him, though they worry what new tyrant they might unleash on the universe. The situation is dire. Knowing they'll call full attention to themselves when they do this, they summon the dragon. Porunga, the Namekian dragon, appears. What is your first wish? Zod quickly shouts, "To make me immortal!" Dende explains that the wish has to be made in Namekian. Good thing Zod doesn't speak Namekian. So in Namekian, Dende makes the first wish. Dende, who had spoken at length with Gohan about their adventures, and had heard about the bravery of the warrior Piccolo on Earth, whom they were seeking to revive, Dende makes the wish, and wishes for the dragon to revive Piccolo. The wish is granted. Piccolo, who had been training since his death with King Kai, finds himself alive again. Porunga asks for the second wish. Zod doesn't feel any different, and he accuses them of lying to him. And apparently, a Namekian heartbeat is just as good a tell of a liar. He knows they lied about the first wish. He demands they correct it. Dende, claiming to comply, makes the second wish. Bring Piccolo to Namek. And a very confused Piccolo, who has just appeared at the place he died, now finds himself on an alien, yet familiar world. Porunga begins to demand to know what is their third wish. And that's when the Ginyu Force arrives. Thinking quickly, Dende asks the dragon to wait for later. He agrees and vanishes from sight. There's one wish left, and there's going to be a battle for it. With Piccolo restored, so too restored is Kami. And with Kami, the dragon lives again, and so do the Earth Dragon Balls. So it's up to the Sea Team to gather them, but they're still dealing with Dr. Gero's forces on Earth. It's going to be a race, once again, to gather the 7 Dragon Balls. And Piccolo, having arrived on Namek, he senses something. A few different power signatures. One's really, really big. Better stay away from them. One further away. A few of them. He senses Gohan. But close by, he senses something else. Something very much like himself. He goes to investigate, and there he finds the home of Guru and Neo. Here, he has time to get caught up on what's going on. Speaking to Guru, he learns about his true homeworld, and Neo notices that Piccolo, though he has grown strong, is still but half a Namekian. As Piccolo learns what's going on, he realizes the urgency. He needs to find Gohan and the Dragon Balls, but Guru stops him before he takes off. There's one thing he can do to tip the scales on their side, unlocking Piccolo's true potential. Piccolo, who had been training with King Kai this whole time, and now, with an additional unlock of his power, is now even stronger. But can he get there in time? As the Ginyu Force has now tracked down the Dragon Balls and our hero, Zod knows he can't give up the Dragon Balls now. He'll have to fight. And he knows the little half has no choice either, backed into a corner, because his mother is just behind them. Zod had seen the results of the little one's rage before. Let's see how he fights now. It just might give them the edge. Let's find out on the next episode of What If Kal-El was Goku.